Star's Journey, Chapter 3. I wake up the next morning with cold dew on my body, my clothes damp, and my body shaking from the cold. I sat up, my hair sticking to my back as I looked at the sunrise. I never wake up early enough to see it. I flinch. My peaceful thoughts ripped from me as panic arose from the movement beside me. I stared at Star, who was still asleep beside me. My eyes flickered black before I took a deep breath in and relaxed. I could still see her shivering slightly, but I knew she could sleep through a lot. I sigh softly, creating a fireball in my hand, harmless and calm as I make it bigger, putting it between us to warm her up and dry me off. After a few minutes, she stopped shivering and my palms felt fine as I wielded the flame. I expected them to hurt or something, but nothing. I held back a groan at the ironic thought of, I just got used to this demon side of me, enough I can wield a fireball properly 3 times its usual size. And now... I shake my head and dismiss the fireball, looking back up at the sky momentarily. I wanted Star to continue to rest as much as she could, so I took off my now dry sweater and placed it on top of her for some extra warmth. My body felt light as I walked back to the house. The whole world seemed so quiet. As I reached the door, I looked back to make sure Star was still sleeping peacefully. As I reached for the door handle, I felt this pain in my chest. It was almost like getting stabbed all over again. My knees struggled to keep me standing as my body wavered side to side. Fear filled my senses as I quietly pressed my head against the door to center my thoughts before they got any worse. I just stared at the ground, this pounding, sharp pain in my chest making it hard to breathe. Just breathe. Star's words echoed in my head. I took a sharp and shaky breath in, trying to make sure this day will be okay. I couldn't be sad today. I couldn't be uncontrollable today. I stubbornly opened my eyes, glaring at the ground as the door handle rattled in my tight grasp. Stopping to see the faint glow of my necklace. It made me smile, reminding me of a time where everything was almost okay. It reminded me of how happy Star was. I took one last good breath in. I'm determined to make today good for Star, but I glance over my shoulder at her, my thoughts pausing as I smile. I still have to teach her so much. I head inside, calmly breathing as I head to the kitchen. I didn't even know what I could teach her, but I knew we weren't done yet. I turned my head away from the door, and I couldn't help the small scream that came from my lungs as our aunt stood in front of me with a stern look on her face. There was kindness in her eyes, but she looked so angry. She didn't have to say a word as she held something in her hand, and it wasn't until I was brave enough to look away from her gaze that I realized she was holding a chunk of the counter. I had broken it off last night. My eyes widened as the wheels turned in my head, quickly standing straighter and looking up at her apologetically. I'll fix it. I flinched at my own words, not because of how quickly I said them or that I didn't even think of saying them, but because my own voice felt so foreign to my ears. It was dry, scratchy. I had to clear my throat a few times before it started feeling normal. Our aunt looked at me worried as my voice broke, but I just shook my head and grabbed it from her hand softly. I promise I'll fix it. I moved to walk past her, but she just stands her ground, looking at me with more concern than Star usually does. Emma, she said softly. It made me stop in my tracks and just look up at her, a kind smile on her face as she turned to put her hand on my back. And she led me into the living room where she had gathered her books from upstairs. The notes Star and I wrote were piled neatly beside the books. There's a spell I want you to look into. I felt heat rise from my chest, fear filling my eyes as I looked at her. Did she want my demon gone too? She probably knew I broke it off because of an outburst again. I'm just getting more destructive. I couldn't even begin to talk. I didn't know what to say, how to say anything that I could. A member of my family who I thought at least tolerated who I was still wanted it gone. She sat down on the couch, patting the space beside her softly. I felt like a robot as I came and sat down beside her. She grabbed the 4th book. It made my heart sink. The last book in the series holding God knows what kind of spells. Then she grabbed a piece of paper that was face down beside the stack of books. It was put on the opposite side of where our notes were. She held it up to the page, examining it closely, flipping through a few pages and then back again. I couldn't help but hold my breath beside her. Alrighty, she said, smiling and putting the book down, still holding the piece of paper in her hand. I flinch at her frighteningly optimistic tone as she stands up. Come on. She motioned for me to follow her. I felt my body shake as I stood up. She paused as I looked at the ground, avoiding her eyes at all costs as my protective magic flared up. My eyes turned black and my back aching to at least form my wings. We walked over to the bathroom, and the piece of the counter was still tightly in my hands. I had forgotten about it until she motioned to me holding it. I shook my head, coming out of this scared, confused state that I was in. What did the counter have to do with turning me into a human? Place the corner back where it belongs, she said softly. I held it to the counter, confused as she gave me the piece of paper. Then make this spell. She looked at me patiently. Her eyes were soft as she waited. I placed the paper down on the counter and made the spell with my fire. Her eyes widened as I did so. The flame lashed out so much more than I would have liked. The idea of her watching me perform a spell from a book I haven't even read made my body shake in some sort of anxious fear, like stage fright as my hand shook. I finished the spell, and as the fire disappeared from the spell circle, the corner of the counter repaired itself. I stared in awe at the power of the spell. You weren't going to take my demon away? I mumbled softly. It was mostly just to get the thought out of my head, but the soft words that just reached my aunt's ears made the whole atmosphere shift. She stood there. I wasn't even looking at her, but I could feel her eyes on me. I flinched as she grabbed me by the shoulders, turning me towards her. My eyes turned black defensively at her strong grasp, fear laced in every muscle of my face. Emma, I would never mess with your power, she said sternly. Tears welled up in her eyes as her grip tightened. That is one thing you have to understand about this world. Messing with someone's power, whether that be getting rid of someone's demon, taking or removing someone's power, it's a big taboo. Now, how do you know about those kinds of spells? My body shook as I tried to keep my fear down, the way Ava was doing everything that she just explained. I couldn't let her know that Star was a demon. Not yet, and not by me. Is there someone my other witch friends have to talk to? Please tell me you are safe. She seemed to ramble, her worried eyes still staring into mine despite my protective magic making mine glow. I stood there, biting my tongue, trying to find the words, but I knew I couldn't keep doing this for long or I'd just pass out. So, in a last-ditch attempt to stop myself from doing that, I spilled everything I could think of, without spilling a thing that I couldn't. There's a girl named Ava. She found out about my demon in the old town before we moved, and I don't know what she is, but she has 2 of my old enemies on her side, and they already tried to get rid of my demon, but my words get caught in my throat as I force myself to skip around the part where Star got turned into a demon. But we were able to escape her the first time, and... God, now what do I say? And... I look around, my mind racing as I try to find the right words. And I think she gave up, and we're safe. But we came out here to be sure. My aunt stood there dumbfounded and staring at me. Every word seemed to register slowly as she thought. After a few seconds, her grip softened. Her eyes closed, and she nodded softly. All right. That, was a lot more than I was expecting. She ran her fingers through her hair, softly mumbling Ava's name like she was trying to remember who she was. I think I know her parents. I can call a meeting and discuss it with them, she mumbled to herself. Unless... Oh, no. She continued to ramble to herself about the old town and who she was thinking about as she walks out of the room and finds an old phone book. I stood there confused in the doorway, a little out of breath from the ramble. Emma, I flinch as she looks at me, grabbing the phone softly. You guys wouldn't mind me being out late again tonight, would you? I shake my head softly. Is pizza okay? Again? She looked back at the phone book, moving over to a number she had marked Moon next to. Auntie, we can cook, it's okay, I say softly. She nods and starts calling some numbers. No, you guys shouldn't have to. I'll order pizza and you guys can relax. I smile softly at her words and shake my head, going to the kitchen to get some leftover pizza for breakfast. I open the fridge to see one piece Star had left me, sitting on a plate with some cling wrap around it. I shake my head and grab it just to wander to the edge of the kitchen to figure out what our aunt was doing. Sherry? Yeah, we have a problem, I think. Someone was talking on the other side of the phone. I couldn't make it out, but it seemed to make my aunt smile. Yeah, tonight is a half moon, I know. We just need to talk. Yeah, we need everyone. I rolled my eyes. She sounded just like a schoolgirl who was meeting up with all her friends for a party. Someone who watched way too many vampire shows. I snickered to myself and walked back to the kitchen, cleaning up what I can and just taking a moment to relax on the floor with my back against the counter. About an hour later, and many phone calls later, our aunt walks into the kitchen, smiling at me softly. Who knew calling people to form a meeting would turn into talking to everyone for way too long? She laughed softly, walking past me and towards the fridge. I was spending my time going over the spell she had given to me earlier. What was all of that about, anyway? I say softly, still examining the runes I had yet to learn, trying to figure out what they could mean. Don't worry about it, she said sternly. Stuff your mother doesn't approve of. I snicker softly and shake my head, dismissing this. It was obvious she didn't want to talk to me about it. She turns her attention towards the back door. She's still asleep out there? She's gonna get you cold, even with your sweater. She's fine. I warmed her up before I came inside. Besides, I've never caught a cold before. I mumble, moving my finger over to a rune, almost trying to stretch out the paper to see better. Yeah, but you're a demon, Emma. Sometimes I wonder if you forget that. I feel my body stiffen up as I accidentally crumple the paper slightly. Yeah, you're right. I'm gonna go check on her, I say, standing up quickly and running off in fear of her catching on. I could feel her eyes on me as I walked out the back door and over to Star. As I walked closer, I realized she was awake, staring at the clouds as I passed over her. Hey, sis, you feeling better? She said, looking over me as I stood beside her. Yeah, sorry for last night, I mumbled softly, shaking my head stubbornly and kneeling to help her up. Let's cook some proper breakfast. You didn't leave me much pizza, I say, smiling at her. You're lucky I left you the last piece. She grabbed my hand, helping herself up and then pushing my shoulder. But I think pancakes are a good breakfast. I nodded as she handed me my sweater back. Can demons catch colds? She asked softly before looking at the sweater, knowing I put it on her to keep warm. I don't think I can, but I'm not sure about half-bloods, ignoring the fact we're still hiding your form from our aunt. The sweater was just an extra measure, I say softly, putting the sweater back on, talking softer as we get closer. Ha! Yeah, right. You were worried about me. She pushes my shoulder again. I glare at her, playfully messing up her hair. Oh, hush. I smile wider as she sticks her tongue out at me. We get to the door. Our aunt smiles at us before looking back at a flyer for pizza on the fridge. Oh, Auntie's gonna be gone tonight again. More time to wreck the house with spells, I say jokingly. At least you know how to fix them now, she said, glaring at me, a small smile on her face. But, with that being said, I'll order them when I get to work, so write down what you want. Star quickly runs and writes down exactly what she had last night, and I just roll my eyes. Thank you again, Auntie, for showing me that spell and letting us stay here, I say softly, hugging her. Of course, my dear. I just hope all goes well. Never be afraid to come here. I promise you're safe. She says softly, patting my head and then going to hug Star. Now, I'll be in my office till I have to go later. I nodded as she walked past me again into her office. What did you tell her? Star said softly as her aunt's door closed behind her. That it's okay now. I glance over my shoulder before nodding. Hopefully. Star sighs softly and grabs the bowls and pans she needed for pancakes as I grab the flour and chocolate chips. She looks at me funny as I place them on the island. What? Do we have to be healthy all the time? I guess not. She smiles and shakes her head as we start mixing what we need to together. Laughing as we covered each other in flour, dough, and water, and then fell on the water we had spilled on the ground. Smiling and laughing as we sat there, flour everywhere. The stove wasn't even turned on yet, and we had already made a big mess. I glance at Star as she wipes some flour from her nose, giggling and flicking it at me just for me to wipe it off my sweater. We stand up after our laughter dies down and continue cooking, finally putting the pancake mix onto the pan. We relaxed in the living room after eating our breakfast around 10 o'clock. It was peaceful today. It felt nice not to worry about anything. So, what to do today? I say softly, waving a piece of pancake on my fork. Spells, flying, or Flying, please? It's so much fun now that I can chase you around, Star said, jumping up, accidentally dropping some pancakes onto the floor. Aw. I laughed softly. Eat the last bite of my pancake and walk over, using my napkin to wipe it off the floor after she picks them up again. Yeah, we can do that. We still need to work on your landing skills, right? She nods at my words as she continues to eat. We could try to work on avoiding the trees better. You did okay last time, but could improve. She glares at me as we smile at each other. We could also take some time and relax, before or after, watch some shows and munch on some popcorn. I smile at her and nod as I walk into the kitchen. That sounds like a good plan. This will be a great day, full of adventure and... Pain surges through my spine as my magic flares up to protect myself against my own thoughts. Death, my mind screams at me. I stubbornly bite my tongue and start running the water in the kitchen sink to hide the shaky breaths I take as I ground myself. What? Star said from the other room. I felt my hands shake as I plummeted the dish into the water, letting the hot water send a tingly pain through my body, hiding one last good, deep breath. And calm relaxation, I yelled, trying to hide the fear in my voice. She laughed softly in the other room. It calmed me down the rest of the way, hearing her innocent laughter. I smiled down at the plates, wiping the last bit of crumbs off them and putting them to the side. Star soon walked into the kitchen while I was spaced off, looking at the window above the sink. She gently pushed me to the side and started washing the dishes off in the sink. I was thinking, Star said softly, getting my attention and softly bringing me back to reality. I looked over at her as my mind was elsewhere. If we want to fly, maybe we should wait until Auntie is gone. Then she won't find out about my demon, which means we can just watch shows and read all those spell books until then. She smiled at me. I couldn't help but just nod slowly and look back out the window. You okay? I shake my head, bring myself back down to reality, and smile at her. Yeah, sorry. I'll look at the spell books, I say, turning to run off. Emma, wait! I froze in my tracks. Star stood behind me, looking down at the ground. What's going on with you? I forced what I thought was a normal smile, although my eyes flickering black and my demon crystal glowing brightly gave my fearful thoughts away as I looked back over at Star. She flinched and brought her hand up in a defensive way. I'm fine, Star. You're worrying too much. I'm feeling great. I forced a lie, my back aching as I tried to keep my magic down. I couldn't break. Not now, not ever. I needed this day to be okay for Star. I turned quickly, walking away and waving my hand dismissively. Now, let's get those books. Want to watch that true crime show? I walked towards the stairs before stopping and looking at the coffee table in the middle of the room. Oh yeah, I mumble, forcing an almost painful toothy smile as I look at the books. You're lying, Star said stubbornly. Something's wrong, and you aren't telling me. She took a few steps towards me, anger in her eyes. Something is really bothering you, and I understand it must be really damn bad if you aren't telling me, but please, I'm your sister, She pauses, looking up at me. Her emotion went from anger to an almost pained fear. Is it something I did? I quickly dropped the fake smile, putting up my hands in a guilty, defensive way. No, Star, you did nothing wrong. Nothing is wrong. I felt my voice crack. The floor felt like it was falling under my feet as my breath shook. Nothing is wrong. We're gonna be fine. Stop lying to me! Star screamed, her right eye turning black as she glared at me. Ever since I told you about what that wolf said to me, you've been acting strange. I glared at her, not angry towards her, but angry. My eyes turned black as I felt my feet plant themselves. That wolf has done nothing but tell us stuff that's gonna go wrong, I yell. First, it's someone's gonna betray you. No duh, we're being hunted down by someone we called a friend. Someone who was against me from the start, and the only good thing she did was give me this damn necklace. But it's really just to keep my power controlled, because that's what I am. I'm uncontrollable. I continue to ramble, getting off topic and thankfully steering away from telling her the truth. Then I see him in my dreams, and it's like he's mocking me. I can protect you, I swear I can, and I'm going to if it's the last thing I do. I bite my tongue, quickly stomping my foot to make myself stop. The shock that ran through my body gave that extra push to the magic I was holding at the surface. My demon side came out to protect me against my thoughts, just making me look bigger, more uncontrollable, and scarier to Star, who was anything but a threat to me. And now I'm seeing Ava popping up everywhere, in conversations with our aunt, in my dreams, and for God's sake, Star, she's out to kill me. I'm allowed to be scared. I'm allowed to have something wrong with me. If someone is hunting me down, just let me fake being happy for you. I yell, my tail flicking side to side as my wings burst outwards. I feel my breath get caught in my lungs as tears stream down from my eyes. Because eventually I won't have to fake it anymore. If I do things that make us both happy, then I won't be sad. That's how it works, right? I felt my voice getting tired, and Star stood her ground in front of me, her right eye still black as her demon stone glowed softly. So please. I choke on my voice before shaking my head and glaring at the ground to avoid glaring at her. Please, just let me make this day okay for the both of us before we have to face her again. Star's feet shifted, a calm stance as she walked over to me, hugging me gently. We're in this together, Emma, she said softly. I know you're scared, but please, I'm here for you too, you know. Her hands wrapped gently around me, under my wings. Thank you for trying to be so strong for me. And if you really want, we can just study the books, watch movies, and fly around today. I nodded softly as I stood there. My palms still felt hot, and I didn't want to burn her, so I just kept my hands to my sides. Please, I just really want to relax and study this stuff, I mumbled softly. She takes a step back, smiling at me, a determined smile. Then we will. We'll have tons of time tomorrow to work on the mountain of schoolwork we've been putting to the side. I groaned, forgetting about my homework. I didn't really care either. I mean, is school really important if I'm going to die before I even go there again? I sigh and smile at Star as I turn to sit on the couch. Yeah, I mumble, plopping myself down on the soft cushion. She smiles and sits on the other couch, across from me, relaxing and grabbing the second spellbook again. I grab the fourth, trying to think back to the spell my aunt gave me. Star turned on the TV, back to the show she was watching, and we listened to it as we studied the books. About half an hour in, I learned the spell she handed me was a creation and time spell, which made sense for a repair spell. Star was looking over at the angels again. She seemed to like them a lot. Dad talked about angels a lot, Star said, smiling at me as she noticed my staring. That's why I want to study them. I'd like to think he was turned into an angel or something. I smile at her kind words as I go back to studying. About an hour and a half later, our aunt left the house, making sure we wrote what we still wanted down on the paper she left on the fridge and taking it before leaving. All right, kids, be safe. Pizza will be here in 40 minutes, our aunt said, walking out the door. I smiled at Star as the door closed behind our aunt. Still want to fly? I say, standing up and putting the book to the side. Heck yeah, Star said, jumping up and tossing the book onto the cushion. We glared at each other and raced for the back door in case our aunt could still see us. I quickly open it before she can, jumping into my demon form and flying just about as high as the roof. Star quickly follows behind me, stumbling to turn into her demon form like I did, but flying up to me once she did. We spent some time flying around, chasing each other and forgetting to teach her how to dodge things, but we worked on playing catch while in the air. It was something Dad used to do with me, and it was much more fun with Star, always testing my limits. What about this? I yelled, throwing the tennis ball we found with my tail. It fell short of her reach. Actually, just saying falling short was a complete understatement. I never taught myself how to use my tail for anything other than balance, and I had much more confidence than skill to be throwing things with it. My face turns red as Star laughs, as I fly down towards it before it could hit the ground. I flinch as I hear a car door close in front of the house. Pizza! Star yelled, flying downwards and stumbling at the door to turn into her human form. I laugh and fly down, running towards her and turning into my human form just as she does. You grab the money and I'll grab the pizza. I nodded and ran towards our aunt's office, where she had left $30 on the table for us. I handed it to Star, smiling and jumping around. It appeared I had made the delivery driver uncomfortable as I jumped around, all hyper and ready for a delicious meal. "Thank you," Star yelled as the delivery driver walked away with the money, counting it with a big smile on his face as he noticed the almost $20 tip. I had snuck in some of my saved-up money as a nice gift. A pained gut feeling as my thoughts continue. Not like I'm gonna use it. Haha. I groan at myself and shake my head, smiling at Star and grabbing one of the pizza boxes from her hand. We stood in the kitchen eating pizza and relaxing, leaning against the countertops and cleaning up the dishes we had left out earlier. "This has been a good day so far. It'll be an even better one once I beat you in another game of flying tag," Star says, putting the leftover pizza in one box and then in the fridge. "Ha! It'd take a miracle to beat me. I'm very skilled with my wings," I say, glaring at her playfully. "Oh yeah?" she says, walking towards the back door. "Try me." I chase after her as she bolts out the door, a big grin on her face as laughter fills the night air. I couldn't help but smile and laugh softly as I chased after her. I gave her a few moments to run, to give her a chance to turn into her demon form. Once she did, I didn't hesitate to turn into my demon form and chase after her as she took to the skies. I swerved around to the side, flying a bit faster than her and slowly catching up. She glances over at her shoulder, smiling at me before I can catch up enough to tag her. She does a backflip and dives down, catching speed with her wings to distance herself from me. I didn't miss a beat before I dove down, trying to catch up to her. My hand just missed her tail as I started catching up. I was about to reach for it again until she drew her wings back, quickly turning out of the way and leaving me stumbling. "Someone learns fast," I yell, smiling at her and using my tail to balance myself as I turn much faster, keeping the chase. "Only because it's the only way to win," she yells. We continued chasing after each other. She couldn't evade me for long. Eventually, I could tell by the way her tail twitched which way she was about to turn, which made the chases continue for long periods, but also made it fair. Eventually, 2 hours passed, and the moon was nowhere to be seen, but the darkness that enveloped the sky told us that it was way past the time we should have gone to bed. I slowly flew towards the ground, my tired wings feeling glad to just fall by my sides. Star lands beside me, stumbling and breathing heavy. "Tired now, right?" she says, gasping for air. I laugh and push her shoulder, making her stumble and fail to push me back. "Yeah, you dork. Only because of those cool turns you did." She stands there smiling triumphantly at my words. "Now let's get some rest. I can't stand being awake any longer. I feel so dead." Star laughs softly as I open the door for her. I snicker as I follow her inside, a pain in my chest for my words, but I shake it off and we head upstairs into our room. "Ready for tomorrow? We have lots of schoolwork to do." I groan as I get in bed, too lazy to turn to my human form. Star giggles softly as she turns into her human form and lays down. "Good night, sis," I say softly, with my wing resting over the side of my bed. She smiled at me, nodding her head. "Good night, sis," she replied, snuggling into her blankets and turning off the lamp that dimly lit the room. I closed my eyes, my mind filling the space where I awoke. I just took this time to wander. There was a pounding in my chest as I walked the purple void. The longer I walked, the more I was confused. There were no dreams that fled in my mind, no nightmares, and no wolf. Although the longer I walked, the more this pain in my chest hurt. Minutes go by, which feels like hours, and eventually I just sit down to relax. My body floated peacefully. Everywhere was comfortable. But it seemed to fight with itself. My body seems to hit the void like floor below me in a sudden jerk of motion as I hear Star's voice echo throughout my head. I chuckle to myself, rubbing the back of my head as the pain seemed to tingle through my skull. It was about time my mind did something. But as I waited there, the soft voice of Star saying my name still rang through my ears. Nothing else happened. It made the pain in my chest hurt even more as my magic flowed to the surface, my body on high alert for what was awaiting me. As Star's voice got louder, static voices seemed to grow with it. It made my head hurt listening to all the noise. I don't know what kind of mind games my mind was playing right now, but it was starting to become hell. I crouched down, covering my ears, trying to block out some of it. It just kept getting louder. Until Star's voice echoed clearer than ever, her screaming, running through my ears and snapping me out of my headspace. "Emma, please, please wake up!" Her voice echoed amongst the quiet chanting that filled the room I awoke in. My eyes turned black, and the moment I try to jump out of bed, I can feel chains grab my limbs. my wings being pinned to the wall behind me. I stare at the scene in front of me, terrified. My head was spinning both from the impact against the wall and pain I couldn't describe that soon flowed through my whole body. My blackened eyes were unblinking as I looked around. Star was pinned against a wall, and Ava was standing in the middle of the room, barely blocking my view of Star. Members of her organization littered the room. Spell circles made of different colored magic were in front of most members, and Ava's eyes met mine, glowing brightly in the unlit room. I felt my wings tighten behind me, ready to push myself off the wall to get to her. I glared at her, my eyes glowing as brightly as hers. "What the hell?" I screamed. I didn't know what to say, but I knew I needed to fight. I knew this was it for me, and like hell I was going down without a fight. I pulled on the chain around my right wrist. A magic circle someone in the back was controlling flickered, and they looked surprised as it glowed brightly. It held me back once again as they closed their eyes, putting more magic into it. I screamed, thrashing around, my tail shaking violently as the shackle around it shook. "Please, leave her alone!" I screamed, biting my tongue accidentally. Ava didn't take her eyes off me. She peered at me, nonchalantly continuing the spell she was chanting. "Emma!" Star thrashed around, tears streaming down her face. "Please, just leave her alone!" I felt my magic flare up as someone tightened the chains around her wrist. Fire flared at my palms weakly. I was unable to control it, so it just sparked to life, lighting up the dim room and then going out. "Ava, you ungrateful lunatic! We were your friends!" I screamed. I could see her eyes soften before she closed them, chanting the spell. Soon, a black spell circle flared to life in front of her. I could hear Star screaming, my eyes fading from black to white as I stared at her. I couldn't protect Star. I didn't care that I couldn't protect myself, but this was the last moment I could protect Star. Through the screams, my eyes drifted to see Star's necklace, glowing brightly along with mine. That wolf was right. He was cold and he was blunt, but he was right. This was the end for me. I felt tears stream down my emotionless face as the feelings seemed to drift away from me. A moment of clarity in the face of this disaster. The eye of the hurricane. I felt the scared shakes my body gave off slow down. I could see the flames of the blackened magic Ava used in front of me. It drifted away into nothing as it left the spell circle. I felt my hands go still as I looked back up at Ava. Her expression was angry. Her hands shook in front of her as the spell formed every new line needed for the spell she was about to cast. The chanting of all her minions added power to the spell. One by one, each new spell pattern was added, and I could see it slowly complete itself. I slowly looked around the room, feeling lost. I take notice of an empty space where I figured Clinton and Carl would be. I saw all the different faces of people around us and noticed one thing was same in every face. The glossy gray eyes. I glanced at Star, my eyes widening as she stared at Ava, taking note of the spell circle. I saw both of her eyes turn black before she screamed, a pained expression littering the muscles on her face before she turned into her demon form. Quick gasps from people as they focused on helping each other hold her down. Ava didn't seem to budge. I assumed she saw us flying. And if she didn't, I had a feeling she knew what that spell did to Star. I felt the chains weaken on me, but I just felt my wings drop, my tail weakly falling to the floor. I couldn't do anything but stare in shock. As Star opened her eyes, only her right eye was black again, both of them glowing a royal blue color under the tears that soon soaked her face. "Emma!" Star screamed. It made my body jump, shaking me back to reality just to have the spell completed in front of me. I felt a surge of pain hit my demon form first. My wings were tight at my sides, as if struck by electricity. I felt my knees trying to hold on, to use my magic to fight what was flowing through it, killing every inch of my magic before it targeted me. I felt my tail curl around my arm, trying to ground myself as my fist tightly held the blanket beneath me. I breathed out, shaking slightly and looking up to see Ava, almost looking proud as she stood over me. I could see the chains weaken around Star, letting her move but not letting her get close to me. I doubted her healing magic could even save me now. My eyes flickered to her necklace again. I grabbed my necklace tightly in my hand, pulling on it, quickly snapping the twine that held it around my neck, and threw it towards Star. I could feel the magic make its way through my body as my demon form disappeared. I saw her catch it, and I couldn't help but smile softly as the pain rattled my skull. I could hear Star scream my name before I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't feel anything. And the tightness in my hands from holding the blanket underneath me faded as well. I glanced up, my eyes filled with tears, my blurry vision focused on Star as I saw her screaming. I couldn't hear her voice anymore, and soon I couldn't even see her. It just faded away around me.